at it again here with another NFL draft video and another top 5. We're about halfway through this series, and today I'm going to be going over my top 5 least favorite or top 5 worst value picks, which means non-first round picks of this past draft. And I know there's 2 names here at number 5 because to me, these 2 picks were so equally stupid that I couldn't decide between the 2, so I decided to include them both because they were both to the same team and to my favorite team, so obviously we're going to talk about them both. Kane Wallace at number 68. This is basically a scenario where the Patriots felt that they just had to take a tackle, and Kane Wallace was quote-unquote the only one left available. I disagree. I think Christian Jones out of Texas would have been a better pick here. He didn't go until round 5. That's obviously a much better value. It still would have been a bit of a reach, but I think that he would have been a little bit better of a pick. But Kane Wallace, let's look at it, shall we? The big thing during the draft was that he only allowed 2 sacks his senior year at right tackle. That's pretty darn good. That's a pretty nice number, except when you look deeper into the numbers, he gave up a lot more quarterback pressures, a lot more quarterback hits that just didn't end up resulting in sacks. And I tend to look at those numbers a little bit more when evaluating prospects rather than strictly sacks, because you can have a guy that, you know, has 14 sacks but only had 14 QB hits and 14 QB pressures, so he went 100% on sacks, which is pretty cool. But did he truly have a better pass rushing season than a guy who had 29 QB pressures but only 8 sacks? I would argue that, at least it's an argument to be made, the guy that had 29 QB pressures in 11 games had a better year than the guy who only had 14 but just so happened to get a sack each and every single time. Obviously, there's a good balance there. So obviously, the 2 sacks allowed is a nice stat, but I tend to value QB pressures and QB hits a little bit more when evaluating pass rushers and linemen alike than actual sacks. So, Kane Wallace, look, does he have potential? Yes. Can he be a starter in the NFL? Possibly. I think he's got a lot of experience, so I guess that's nice. But the problem is he's going to be playing left tackle for the Patriots, and he's been playing right tackle his whole college career. It's not, exactly, you can't just snap your fingers and automatically take a great right tackle and move him over to left tackle. We've seen it happen and it work. We've seen it happen and it not. So it's not a guarantee, and a guy that I think you really reached on, I had probably a more of a mid to late 4th round grade on Kane Wallace, but they felt that he was the only guy left. And again, I say Christian Jones would have probably been a better pick here. Still would have been a reach, but I would have at least been okay with it. I'm a bigger Christian Jones guy than a Kane Wallace guy, but that to me was a bit of a reach, so I included here at number 5. And Layden Robinson, I would argue, is probably actually a little bit worse than the Kane Wallace pick. At least Kane Wallace, was projected to be drafted. At least Kane Wallace was projected to, at least go in the 4th round or maybe early 5th round. So it's a reach. But Layden Robinson, I had him graded probably somewhere around 350 to 390. I mean, way past pick 252 or whatever the number of the draft is, 250 something. So clearly he wasn't even on my radar. It wasn't even a guy that I was thinking about, the Patriots or anybody else for that matter drafting. This is a guy that, a couple of years ago was kind of rumbling around being a 1st round or a 2nd round pick, had that potential, but just never panned out. He never got a lot better in pass rush. He's a good run offensive lineman. He's good in the run game, but that's really about it. If you want to take a flyer on the guy in the 7th round, okay, fine. Who cares? That happens all the time. Guys that aren't on the draft radar, the team just likes the personality or likes a specific trait and things they can coach him in the 7th round. You bring him in. I don't care. That's fine. But a 4th round draft pick to be a guy that's now going to have a lot of pressure on his shoulders to at least be a backup and make the team, in which I don't even really think he has the tools. I just don't. That's just my opinion, and I feel like a lot of people also feel that way with Layden Robinson. We'll see if he pans out. Again, he did have some good potential a couple of years ago, where again, he was thrown out there as kind of early picks to go in the 1st and 2nd round in this year's draft. It just didn't end up happening that way. So we'll see. They're taking a flyer on a guy. We'll see what happens. But again, to me, these 2 picks were of absolutely terrible value. I think they could have gotten other people. Again, A guy like Christian Mahogany, I featured him in another video. I would have much rather they taken him in the 4th round. I had a 2nd round grade on Christian Mahogany. I understand he didn't go until the 6th. I understand that I'm the only person that likes that guy that much. But that's just the way I feel. I was begging them, take Christian Mahogany. Take Christian Mahogany if you're going to take a guard. And they took a guard and they took this one, and it just didn't make any sense to me. So both of these guys, stinky picks, in my opinion, for the Patriots for this upcoming season. The Arizona Cardinals had a pretty darn good draft overall, but this was a head-scratcher for me. Tip Ryman out of Illinois went number 82 overall to the Cardinals, and I just didn't value him that highly as a prospect. And plus, unless I'm out of my mind, is Zach Ertz not already in Arizona? Am I tripping? I could be wrong. Maybe he left in free agency and I just missed it. But regardless, I'm pretty sure I had again, I'd have to check my notes to verify for sure, but I had a 5th round grade on him, I think. Maybe a 4th round grade on him. And so to get him in the early 3rd round, or maybe mid-3rd round, I guess, at 82 overall, I just don't like this particular fit. I don't think that it was necessarily a position of a high need. I think you really needed to go defensive back or just more defense in general, maybe linebacker, maybe continue to build up that offensive line to protect Kyler Murray, or you know what, maybe even take Spencer Rattler at this point and get a backup quarterback that's going to be serviceable in case Kyler Murray gets hurt. We've seen him get hurt quite a bit. He's just coming back from injury, halfway through last year. So I just didn't like the fit. Not to necessarily not tip Ryman as a player. I actually think he could be a fairly decent receiving tight end in the NFL. But, I just didn't like the fit here for Arizona at 82. I think they could have gone in a different direction and it would have been much better value. Another head-scratcher here for the Dolphins. Patrick Paul in the 2nd round. A guy that I even had, Kane Wallace, who I've obviously discussed a little bit earlier in this video, graded ahead, in the 4th round. So, yeah, weird picks, all throughout the draft, really, for the Miami Dolphins. I think that they had one of the strangest drafts. It wasn't necessarily a all-terrible draft. It just was an odd. I thought that they had some odd picks, all throughout. I thought that they really didn't focus on guys that and positions that they really needed. I didn't think they fit holes very much on their roster. And Patrick Paul, again, you spent so much money on offensive linemen. Maybe you want to get a big-time guard or something like that to replace Robert Hunt, who you lost in free agency. But instead, you got Patrick Paul, who, again, I just didn't, think that highly of going into the draft. We'll see how he pans out, but I think, again, if you were going to go tackle, you could have gotten much better value at this point. And I realistically think that they should have probably continued to go defense, considering all the pieces they lost on that end of the field. Moving across the state to Jacksonville, Jordan Jefferson out of LSU in the 4th round, pick 116. This just doesn't make much sense to me. Again, Jordan Jefferson universally had about a 6th to 7th round, maybe even undrafted value here at defensive tackle. And the Jaguars, they take a flyer on the guy, and, your franchise isn't going to fold on a 4th round pick, right? I should have said that when talking about Layden Robinson earlier. But for me, I just don't see it. I don't see the tools. I don't see, what the Jaguars saw in this guy. He wasn't particularly productive in college. He didn't really flash anything to me on tape that screams, ooh, I need to take a flyer on this guy. At least with Layden Robinson, he's a dominant run blocker, right? Useless in pass blocking at the moment, but at the very least, there's something there to build off of. With Jordan Jefferson, I just don't see it. He's obviously defensive tackle. He's a big boy and a run stopper by trade, but at the same time, I just don't really see the tools here that's going to make sense for Jacksonville. And again, Jacksonville's another team that I didn't particularly love their entire draft, but regardless, this was a weird one for me, and I would, again, there's a reason why this is at number 2. I think it was one of the worst value picks in the entire draft. Jacksonville, you got to do better. And at number 1, I hate to continue to pick on the Atlanta Falcons, but their first two picks were just absolutely bananas to me. I mean, it just didn't make much sense at all, in my opinion. Ruk Aoro, granted one of the most fun names to say in the draft, but should not have been said at this point in the draft. I think that, you know, Ruk Aoro is a guy that I probably would have had a 3rd to 4th round grade on. In terms of overall lack of value, I actually would put Jordan Jefferson and Patrick Paul ahead of him, but the reason why he's number 1 in my list is because of what you did in the first round. You drafted a quarterback in the first round that you didn't need, at least at the moment. And so what you did was you traded up to get a defensive tackle that, just going to be honest with you, does not fit the need that you guys really need in Atlanta. Now, look, Aoro is a guy that can slide in and probably be a starter right away, but your main issue in Atlanta is pass rush. I don't see Aoro being a guy that is going to be an elite pass rusher in the NFL. If you're going to get, you know, if you're going to try and pick somebody at that position, you want him to be a pass rusher, and Aoro is not that guy, at least not on tape. Obviously, he's got some potential in that area. Otherwise, why in the world would you pick him? But for me, I think you could have gone in a different direction. I think you definitely could have traded down and got, you know, got some value, or just not trade up. I mean, there's, you know, you traded up to get the guy, so you even wasted more value down the board. Just mind-blowing first 2 picks for the Falcons. You know, this may be unfair to Mr. Aoro. Have you gotten sick of me sounding like I'm in a Scooby-Doo novel, by the way, or a Scooby-Doo episode saying this guy, Aoro? Like, I'm a little bit sick of it, so sorry about that. But not to be unfair to him necessarily, because I actually think in a vacuum this pick's not number 1. But going off of what the Falcons did in the first round, these first 2 picks were just absolutely atrocious for the Atlanta Falcons. So Ruk is my number 1 here. Yeah, that's going to do it for me, guys, for this episode, or for this video, I should say. Let me know what you guys think. Is there somebody that I missed, you know, that was even worse value than these guys? Or is there somebody that you would replace in this video? Or do you agree with me completely? Let me know in the comment section below. Thank you guys so very much for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you all next time.